Most people have attended the wrong event at least once. A wrong address, a wrong room, a wrong turn. The mistake is usually corrected within seconds. An apology is exchanged, and everyone moves on. But sometimes the people on the other side don't seem interested in correcting the mistake. Sometimes they insist you belong there. Tonight's stories are about ordinary people who found themselves in the wrong place, and the people who refused to believe it. Ethan realized he was at the wrong funeral almost immediately. The service was being held in a small chapel on the edge of town. He had never been there before. The parking lot was unusually full. Cars lined both sides of the road. People dressed in black moved quietly toward the entrance. At first, everything seemed normal. Ethan checked the address on his phone. Then he checked it again. The funeral he was supposed to attend was on the opposite side of the city. Different chapel, different family, different service. He had entered the wrong one. Embarrassed, he slipped into the back row and waited for a pause so he could leave without attracting attention. The chapel was silent. A woman stood near the front, speaking softly about the deceased. Ethan didn't recognize a single name. Not the man being remembered, not his relatives, not anyone in attendance. The mistake should have ended there. Instead, someone sat beside him. An elderly woman. She smiled politely. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you came." Ethan gave an awkward smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The woman shook her head. "No, I don't think there has." Before Ethan could answer, the service resumed. For the next 20 minutes, he sat quietly. Each time he prepared to leave, another speaker stepped forward. Something about the atmosphere made standing up feel strangely inappropriate. Eventually, the service ended. People began gathering near the exit. Ethan waited for the crowd to thin. Then he started toward the door. A man intercepted him halfway there. Tall, gray-haired, friendly. He extended his hand. "Thank you for coming." Ethan hesitated. "I think I'm at the wrong funeral." The man's smile didn't change. "We know." For several seconds, Ethan simply stared at him. The man seemed completely sincere, not confused, not amused, just calm. "You know?" "Of course." "Then why?" The man glanced toward the front of the chapel. "Because he would have wanted you here." A chill moved through Ethan's chest. "Who?" "The deceased." "I didn't know him." The man nodded. "I know." "Then why am I here?" The smile returned. "That's a difficult question." The conversation ended there. The man excused himself and walked away. Ethan left immediately. Outside, he sat in his car for several minutes, trying to process what had happened. The entire exchange felt absurd. Maybe the family had mistaken him for somebody else. Maybe the man had dementia. Maybe there was a simple explanation. By the time he reached home, He had almost convinced himself of that. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, he would have ignored it. For some reason, he answered. "Hello?" A quiet voice responded. "You made it." Ethan frowned. "Who is this?" The caller ignored the question. "Thank you for coming today." The line disconnected. Ethan immediately called back. The number was unavailable. He checked the call log. The call had lasted 17 seconds. Nothing more. No name. No information. No explanation. Weeks passed. Then months. Life gradually returned to normal. The funeral became a strange memory. One of those stories people tell at dinner parties. A misunderstanding. A coincidence. Something unusual. Nothing more. Then, nearly 6 months later, Ethan stopped at a gas station while driving home. As he entered the convenience store, a familiar voice called his name. Not Ethan. The other name. The one spoken at the funeral. The name he had never heard before that day. Ethan turned. The gray-haired man stood near the coffee machine. The same smile. The same expression. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the man nodded politely. "Good. You came back." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "I don't know who you think I am." The man looked genuinely puzzled. Then he replied with the final thing Ethan ever heard him say. That's exactly what he used to say. Not everyone is mistaken for the same person in the same way. For the next man, the confusion followed him everywhere. No matter where he went, no matter who he met. Everyone seemed to know him by a different name. Not everyone is mistaken for the same person in the same way. For the next man, the confusion followed him everywhere, no matter where he went, no matter who he met. Everyone seemed to know him by a different name. Victor first noticed it in a restaurant. The hostess smiled as he approached. "Good evening, Mr. Ashford." Victor stopped. "Sorry?" The hostess blinked. "Mr. Ashford? I think you've got the wrong person." The woman immediately apologized. Victor laughed it off and followed her to his table. The entire interaction lasted less than 10 seconds. He forgot about it before his food arrived. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Different city, different restaurant, different employee. Same name. Mr. Ashford, Victor corrected them. The employee apologized. Life moved on. Then it happened a third time, and a fourth. Then a fifth. The locations changed. The people changed. The name never did. Mr. Ashford. At first, Victor treated it like an amusing coincidence, a strange story to tell friends. Nothing more. Then one evening he checked into a hotel during a business trip. The receptionist looked at him, then at her screen, then back at him. "Welcome back, Mr. Ashford." Victor immediately sighed. Not again. Wrong person. The receptionist frowned. That's strange. What? You used this reservation last year. Victor stared at her. I've never stayed here. The woman seemed genuinely confused. For several seconds, she studied her monitor. Then she apologized and handed over the room key. The matter should have ended there. Instead, it became harder to ignore. Months passed. The same name continued appearing. Coffee shops, airports, hotels, conferences. Sometimes people corrected themselves. Sometimes they didn't. One afternoon, Victor finally asked a question. A cashier at a bookstore had just greeted him using the same name. When the transaction was finished, Victor stopped her. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you call me Mr. Ashford? The cashier looked surprised. Because that's your name. No, it isn't. The woman frowned. Then why do you look exactly like him? Victor felt a brief chill. What do you mean? The cashier shrugged. I've only seen him a few times. But I would have sworn it was you. That answer bothered him more than any previous encounter. Because for the first time, someone wasn't simply using the wrong name. Someone believed he was the wrong person. That night, Victor started searching. The internet offered thousands of Ashfords. Most led nowhere. Then he found an obituary. A local newspaper. 3 years old. The article was short. A photograph accompanied it. Victor stared at the image for a long time. The resemblance wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close enough to prove anything. But it was enough. Same eyes. Similar jawline. Similar age. Enough to make him uncomfortable. Victor closed the page and tried to forget it. He failed. The encounters continued. Sometimes weeks passed without one. Sometimes several happened in a single day. Then one evening he entered a small diner during a rainstorm. The place was nearly empty. An elderly waitress approached carrying a menu. She looked at him, smiled, and said, "It's been a while, Mr. Ashford." Victor didn't even bother correcting her anymore. The woman sat down across from him, without asking, without invitation. For several seconds, she simply studied his face. Then she nodded. You know, he used to do that too. Victor slowly lowered his coffee cup. Do what? Pretend. Pretend what? That he wasn't Mr. Ashford. The waitress smiled sadly. Victor felt a knot forming in his stomach. Who was he? The woman looked toward the rain-covered window, then back at Victor. For a moment he thought she might finally explain everything. Instead, she simply said, "He still comes here sometimes." Victor stared at her. "You said he died." The waitress nodded. "I know." Neither of them spoke again. Victor finished his coffee, paid his bill, and left. Several times he considered returning. Several times he thought about asking more questions. He never did. Years later, he still remembers the woman's final sentence, not because it frightened him, but because of how casually she said it, as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. He still comes here sometimes. Most people would dismiss a wrong name as a simple mistake. The next man tried doing exactly that. Unfortunately, his mistake involved a front door. Most people would dismiss a wrong name as a simple mistake. The next man tried doing exactly that. Unfortunately, his mistake involved a front door. Mark lived alone. A small apartment building. 3rd floor, Unit 3B. He had lived there for nearly 4 years, long enough to know every neighbor by sight, long enough to walk home without thinking. One Thursday evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, he returned home later than usual. It was raining. His clothes were soaked. His phone battery was nearly dead. All he wanted was a shower and sleep. He entered the building, climbed the stairs, walked down the hallway, inserted his key. The lock clicked. The door opened. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The furniture looked different. But Mark assumed his exhausted brain was playing tricks on him. Then he noticed the photographs. None of them belonged to him. The couch was different. The walls were different. The apartment wasn't his. Mark froze. For several seconds, he simply stood there, staring. Then a voice came from the kitchen. "You're late." A man stepped into view, mid-50s, holding a coffee mug. Completely calm. Mark immediately backed toward the door. "I'm sorry. Wrong apartment." The man nodded. "I know." Mark waited. The man simply stood there, neither angry nor surprised, just watching him. Mark gave an awkward smile. Then he left. The entire encounter lasted less than a minute. Outside, he checked the apartment number. 4B, not 3B. 1 floor too high. Simple mistake. Embarrassing, but simple. At least that's what he told himself. The following week, he almost forgot about it. Then Saturday arrived. Mark stopped at a grocery store on the other side of town. He was standing in line when a familiar voice spoke behind him. Earlier this time. Mark turned. The man from the apartment. Same coffee-colored jacket. Same calm expression. For several seconds, neither spoke. Mark finally managed. "Do I know you?" The man smiled. "You did last week." The line moved forward. The conversation ended. Mark paid for his groceries. When he looked back again, the man was gone. No cart, no basket, no purchases. Just gone. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Mark began noticing him everywhere. Not constantly. Not enough to feel impossible. Just enough to feel wrong. Across parking lots, inside restaurants, standing at train stations, always alone, always calm, always observing, never approaching, never speaking, except once. 3 months later. Mark exited a pharmacy and nearly walked directly into him. The man stepped aside politely, then said, "Much better." Mark stopped. "What?" The man nodded toward the street. "You're getting here earlier every time." Before Mark could respond, the man crossed the road and disappeared into a crowd. That night, Mark barely slept. The next morning, he decided to confront him if he ever saw him again. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then months. Still nothing. Eventually, life returned to normal. The strange encounters faded into memory. Until one evening when he returned home from work. Something was waiting beneath his apartment door. A single sheet of paper. No envelope. No signature. No explanation. Just one sentence. "You were late the first time." Mark read it several times, then flipped the page over. Nothing. No address. No handwriting he recognized. No clue where it came from. He threw it away. 2 days later, curiosity got the better of him. He returned to the building where the mistake had happened. 4th floor. Apartment 4. B. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Eventually, another resident opened a nearby door. "Can I help you?" Mark pointed toward 4B. "Do you know the man who lives there?" The neighbor looked confused. Nobody lives there. Mark stared at him. "What?" "Nobody has for years. The place has been empty since I moved in." Mark glanced back at the door. Apartment 4. B sat silently at the end of the hallway. Locked. Dark. And according to everyone in the building,
completely empty.
Most mistakes begin with a single wrong step. A wrong floor. A wrong turn. A wrong door. The next man's mistake was even smaller. Just one incorrect digit on a form. Most mistakes begin with a single wrong step. A wrong floor. A wrong turn. A wrong door. The next man's mistake was even smaller. Just one incorrect digit on a form. Daniel was renewing his insurance information when it happened. Nothing complicated. Just paperwork. Names, addresses, phone numbers. The kind of forms people complete without paying attention. A week later, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. The caller immediately asked for someone named Eric.
Wrong number.
The caller apologized and hung up. Daniel forgot about it. Then another call arrived. Different number. Same person. Eric. Again, Daniel explained they had the wrong number. Again, the caller apologized. Still nothing unusual. Then the calls continued. Every few days. Different voices. Different cities. Different reasons. But always the same person. Eric. One caller wanted money. Another wanted a meeting. Another asked whether Eric was still living at the old address. The details changed. The name never did. Eventually, Daniel grew curious. He called the insurance company. After 20 minutes of waiting on hold, an employee found the problem. One digit. A single incorrect number had been entered into a database. The representative apologized and corrected it. Problem solved. At least that was the expectation. The calls continued. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing changed. One afternoon, a woman called. She sounded exhausted. When Daniel explained she had the wrong number, she became silent. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she quietly asked, "Is he still doing this?" "Doing what?" "Pretending." Daniel frowned. "I'm sorry." The woman sighed. "Never mind." The line disconnected. That conversation stayed with him. Pretending. The word bothered him for reasons he couldn't explain. A month later, another call arrived. An older man this time. His voice was shaking. When Daniel explained the mistake, the caller interrupted. "No, this is the number." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I've never met Eric." The man became quiet. Then he said something Daniel never forgot. "Tell him we're still waiting." The line disconnected. Daniel stared at his phone. The same phrase returned again and again over the following months. Different callers, different voices, different situations. One sentence. "Tell him we're still waiting." No one explained who they were. No one explained what they wanted. And none of them seemed surprised to hear Daniel answer. Eventually, the calls stopped. Completely. For nearly a year. Then one night, a voicemail appeared. No missed call. No notification. Just a voicemail. Daniel listened. The recording lasted 4 seconds. A man's voice said, "I got your messages. Nothing else. No explanation. No second sentence. Just that." Daniel checked the number. Unavailable. He deleted the message. The next morning, it had somehow reappeared. He deleted it again. This time, it stayed gone. Years later, Daniel still doesn't know who Eric was, or why so many strangers seemed convinced they were speaking to him. But one detail still bothers him. Of all the people who called, not a single one ever asked where Eric had gone. It was as if every caller already knew. Sometimes people mistake you for someone else. Sometimes they call you by the wrong name. Sometimes they invite you to the wrong funeral. And sometimes a simple mistake places you somewhere you were never supposed to be. The final story began with exactly that. A wrong room. Nathan arrived 20 minutes early. The meeting invitation had been sent by email. A conference room, 3rd floor, Building C. Nothing unusual. He entered the building, took the elevator, found the room, and stepped inside. The room was occupied. 6 people sat around a large table, laptops open, coffee cups scattered everywhere. Conversation stopped as soon as Nathan entered. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then a woman near the far end of the table smiled. "Good. You're here." Nathan immediately realized something was wrong. "Sorry. I think I have the wrong room." Several people exchanged glances. The woman nodded. "Yes. You're in the wrong room." Nathan smiled. "Then I'll leave you to..." "Wait." Nathan paused. The woman stood, walked toward him, and closed the conference room door. Not aggressively, not threateningly, just calmly. Nathan laughed nervously. "I really do have another meeting. We know." The same words again. "We know." Something about that answer immediately unsettled him. The woman returned to her seat. "You're not the person we expected." Nathan relaxed slightly. "Okay. Good. Then I'll go," the woman continued. "But you're the person who showed up." The room remained completely silent. No one smiled. No one laughed. No one acted as though this were a joke. Nathan glanced toward the door. Nobody blocked it. Nobody stopped him. He could leave whenever he wanted. Yet something about the room made him hesitate. The woman slid a folder across the table. "Take it." Nathan didn't move. "What's inside?" The woman shrugged. "We've been trying to figure that out ourselves." Nathan stared at the folder, then at the people around the table. Every face looked serious. Every face looked tired. And every face seemed relieved he was there. Finally, Nathan stepped forward, opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence, typed in large black letters. "If someone else arrives first, leave immediately." Nathan looked up. Nobody spoke. He looked back down. Below the sentence was a date. Tomorrow's date. Nothing else. No names. No signatures. No explanation. Nathan closed the folder, placed it back on the table, then walked straight out of the room. No one followed. No one tried to stop him. As he reached the elevator, he heard the conference room door open behind him. The woman called after him one final time. "Nathan." He froze. He had never told them his name. Slowly, he turned around. The woman was standing alone in the hallway. For several seconds, she simply watched him. Then she said, "Good. You're not the first one." The door closed, and that was the end of it. At least that's what Nathan thought. The following day, he arrived at his actual meeting. Same building, same floor, same time. As he walked past the conference room from the day before, he noticed something strange. The room was empty. Completely empty. No laptops. No coffee cups. No people. Just a locked door and a dark room beyond the glass. When he later asked building management about it, their answer was immediate. Nobody had used that room for years. Most mistakes are harmless. A wrong address, a wrong name, a wrong number, a wrong room. But every once in a while, the mistake isn't yours. And that's the part people never seem able to explain. Because in each of these stories, the strangest thing wasn't the mistake itself. It was the fact that everyone else acted as though it wasn't a mistake at all.